Hello, everybody, and indeed, welcome to another edition of Hoosier Hometown Heroes. I'm Tony Val, and today my guest is Paul McCoy of TIDAL Coach. Paul is a certified business coach, executive coach, and business consultant, and I invite you now to enjoy my conversation with Paul McCoy. Hoosier Hometown Heroes is sponsored by Prometheus Consulting. Prometheus is Indy's most trusted name in outsourced IT support. Well, Paul, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Where I wanted to start, I want to imagine, let's say, Paul, you and I have just met at a networking event, something like that. And I asked you that age-old question, what do you do? We hear so often. What would be your response here? Can you give me like a 1 or 2 minute elevator speech about what you do?
Sure. I am a business coach, really doing more consulting, or I have basically consulted as opposed to coaching over the last 8 years. So I go into businesses and help them solve problems. A lot of businesses have got issues with the 4 factors that I play with are people, process, profit and perspective. So people, they need to hire people. So I have a tool for that in Metrics. But it's quite an in-depth profile that I help the owner assess the potential candidate and helps weed out the ones that aren't going to be a good cultural fit. So with people, help them with getting the right person in the right seat on the bus. And help them sort of guide them through what they need to do to bring those people on board. With processes, I'm very much driven and have been driven by processes from my corporate background. So it's getting the consistency of response. It's not processing and documenting everything, but it's getting that consistency when you're having touch points with customers, especially, or when you've got a critical thing that you're trying to do within your business, that you're trying to make sure you get consistent approach, that you're thinking of all the right things, asking the right questions, especially when that documentation or that idea gets passed along to someone else. You've got to make sure that they have everything they need. If they don't, they'll come back to you, and then that's a wasteful sort of using Six Sigma as a process, a very wasteful sort of approach, because no longer is it not out of your hands, it's back in your hands. You've then got to spend time doing what you should have done in the first place. And then profitability is making sure people understand the numbers and they really go through them and understand what's being spent, where it's being spent. And I looked at an invoice yesterday, or a statement yesterday, questioned a $2,400 transfer of money, and it was wrongly moved by someone who had access to the bank from an account that they should have had from the account that it came from. So that's going back in. $2,400 for a small business can be a lot of money. Yeah. And then perspective, it's really understanding where you want to go to, where you want to get to. Having the right thinking, the strategic planning is a buzzword that people sort of say, oh, I don't know about that, don't know what it is, but it's really thinking about what you want to do as a business, and ultimately what you want to do as a entity that whatever you choose to do is what supports your entity, and ultimately you and your family as the business owners. And driving it forward, but breaking that down into then goals and objectives, and making sure that they have that the team knows how this all aligns. I've seen businesses, and in my previous business improvement days, where departments have been eradicated because they no longer serve any function. They would work and they would do business. They would do pass paper around, they get signatures, but what had happened probably 5 or 6 years earlier, this department had been pulled out of the process. No one had really looked at the wider implications of the process changing, and as a result of that, they basically were doing nothing. So in that was a lot of money. 5 or 6 years of doing 5 or 6 people in a corporate setting. That was a lot of money that was saved in just understanding that they no longer served what they should have been doing. That was an extreme, but a lot of people still do things that are either substandard to the business's needs or excess and no longer serve a function. So understanding, the strategy, how things can move forward with that strategy, and letting people see the line of sight.
I see. So, it strikes me that you probably have a very methodical approach to what you do, and I wonder if it's your engineering background. Can you talk a little bit about how having an engineering background maybe makes you kind of unique in the business coaching realm? I'm very curious.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm for listeners, I'm a recovering engineer, as I call myself. I'm once an engineer, always an engineer. I'm a mechanical engineer, spent 27 years with Rolls-Royce, and got a master's in gas turbine technology and business at the same time. So the methodology, every single time you pick up a new design, you have to evaluate what are the parameters that you're trying to achieve? What does success look like? So you have to understand what the end goal is. Start with the end in mind. You have a new widget that you're trying to design, and you're trying to move that through to something that satisfies a criteria. So you've got to look at the requirements. You've got to go through a very sort of in-depth process that includes looking at the fit, form, and function of a product. It's you look at how that the functionality is, making sure it serves the purpose. You've got to look at cost. You've got to look at weight when in the aerospace world, and you've got to really understand what it's doing and does it solve the problem. It's sort of no good having the gold-plated nibbed pen when a biro would suit. So you have to look at the cost of it. You've got to look at the functionality. You've got to look at everything to do with that product, and does it serve its purpose? People say, I'd say is it quality product, and a quality product is it fits its purpose. It's not necessarily a Rolls-Royce motor car, or it's not a whatever jet that's a Gulfstream jet that has gold-plated sink taps or whatever. It's whatever's fit for purpose. It's got to suit its needs within the price frame that you were aiming at when you started designing it.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of fitting your purpose, I am imagining, I'm just using kind of my own experience as a business owner, and I've learned over so many years, so many different things can go wrong. There's such a wide variety of skills that really you need to bring to a business to make it function well.
Right.
I'm starting to get the feeling, Paul, that when a potential client approaches you, all those discussions must start to look, they're almost like custom discussions. No two clients are alike, I would assume. So what does engaging with you look like?
I think if I prefaced it in a nutshell, then I'll dive into it. Engaging with me is, there's never one size fits all. There's never one solution. Sometimes there is, but generally there's never one solution that fits every single customer. So a lot of the time it's either the tool doesn't suit, the particular customer hasn't got the aptitude to, or the time to delve into that and understand that way of doing it. Might be too complex, might be too engineeringly or technologies based or whatever. So you've got to really think about whatever solution I come up with and use is something that is understandable to the client, and that they can readily go forward and use it the next time, after I've moved on, and take them through the process a few times, and they can start to use it in their own realm, or just use it separately to solve other problems. So jumping into how do I do that? It's through a series of questions that basically I delve into understanding where their pain points are, where they really sort of need the help. And sometimes it's not where they think, because often they'll say, oh, it's just sales. I can't get sales. I can't get people. I can't get whatever. And sometimes what they're being told or what they're perceiving is not necessarily accurate. So you've got to be diplomatic and say, I think there's some other areas that need to be addressed first. And not to say that this isn't it's a true concern, but I don't think it's number one. For other clients, I've listed out the issues, and the ones that are keeping them up at night aren't necessarily the ones that are causing them the most pain. But if you take those away, then they can focus on the pain point ones a little bit more clearly, and have that sort of ability, the clarity, or the ability to have clarity over what they're looking for. Spend the time on that item and move forward. So, correct. Every client has business is business, but every client's got its own challenges. They're based on their perspective, their backgrounds, their experience, their education, the product or service that they're providing, the customers, every single one, and then the workforce. Every worker has its own different perspective. So the big challenge is to get everyone aligned, rowing in the same direction, so that they can actually make positive waves.
It strikes me that your job is never a boring one. It's like working a puzzle every day of your professional life, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I smile every time when someone says that, because it's absolutely true. There's never a cookie cutter response. It's always something a little bit different. There's always a little little twist or shake or whatever that comes in that needs addressing. So correct. It's never a one size fits all, and it never gets boring.
Something I've noticed amongst my business owner friends, and I suppose myself as well, I feel like we are very strong in some ways. Usually it's a silo. Yep. I have business owner friends who are tremendous salespeople. I have, if I think of Kurt Whitesell, who I had on the show, he's a tremendous marketing mind, tremendous. Some people are very, very good at operations. I'm curious to hear from you, Paul. Over the years, do you see, given that everyone's unique, I hear that, but do you see any common pitfalls amongst business owners, common challenges that we have?
I would say that not everyone's a natural marketeer. Not everyone's a natural salesperson. Even not everyone's a natural operations person. You get people that are fantastic technical experts in the field of their business, but then they can't put it together. They do make, some businesses make a lot of money, and half the time, the owner says, don't know how I made this, but they're charging the right rate, maybe, and they've got an edge that people come to them for that. But I think sales, marketing, and operations would be one of those. And then I think most business owners are driven. Then it's a matter of not having a strategic plan that can get them to the next level, should they want to get there, without really thinking, without sort of having to hire an amazing group of people that can get them there. They tend to sit on the next ideas, come up with it very, very quickly, go down that route, and it's not given the forethought or the sort of attention that it probably deserves, because it might be the best thing in the world, and you double down on that avenue, or it might be the worst thing, and you'd have to stop it immediately. They're not as strategic in their approach as they possibly could be or should be. But there's always exceptions. Some are just phenomenal people all around, and they just want, a pair of eyes to, either see what they're doing, be a sounding board for what they propose, and see if there's any enhancements or tweaks that can be made. And those enhancements or tweaks are just what gets them, that endorsement gets them the sort of the approach and the support and enough motivation to move to the next level. I find a lot of business owners very lonely. They need someone to talk to. Their spouses, their friends are all bored with talking to them about business, and they want them for them and not for the business. And the business owners find that they don't have that sounding board with someone, with experience that they can talk to, and have a rational discussion and fight through the sort of the different opportunities and come up with the best solution, or come up with drop off the ones that aren't going to work and come up with the ones that will work and worth a try.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's an interesting distinction. I hadn't really thought about it much, but you're right. When you bring it's hard to bring your work home because no one else in the family has any idea what you're talking about.
or after a while, the inclination to listen.
Right.
Your dog's probably your best friend if you have a dog.
Yes. There are times, if I'm being totally honest, my business partner, Denver Abernathy, sometimes if he talks shop with me, sometimes I find it boring as heck, and it's our own business.
Yeah. It's not your technical expertise that you particularly have a bent on that you can then say, okay, you can't further the discussion. He's probably very, very clever at that portion of the business. Your portion, your swim lane. Yeah. And other than something that impacts the total business, you're in your own technical line and lane.
Absolutely. Something I wanted to make sure to ask you, Paul, you've talked on, I've seen on your website and blog posts and a bit here and there in social media, you talk about the importance of mental toughness. I'm curious, can you give us any pointers on how one can develop mental toughness? How does that work?
It's, so I'm just right. I was writing my 5th out of 6 blog on mental toughness to bringing the sporting analogy back into the business or into the business. So people struggle with what mental toughness is, and it's from a sporting perspective, it's quite easy. I'll use your vernacular. You're the kicker for the Colts, and you have a 3-point chance and you're 2 points down. Mental toughness is the ability for that kicker to go up there and not be broken down by the pressure, because the whole stadium that's blue and white is vying for you to win. And if you kick it, you're great. If you don't, you're the worst thing in the world because you've lost the game. Although the game is, the whole team should be part of that game. So the mental toughness for me is the ability to knock out the external factors that are affecting you at that point in time for you to be able to focus on your role. So push that into the business world. I suppose if we go back to a sporting analogy, Tiger Woods' father used to create scenarios very noisy, very distracting for Tiger when he was practicing, to the point that the guy could stand there, someone could shout something in the middle of a backswing, he could stop that backswing, walk away, reset. And I've never seen anyone, I saw it a couple of times on the television, I was going, boy, is that strong. The ability for him to walk away from that shot, or conversely, to follow through with it and not have that external factor hitting you. So you push it into a business world, you're facing, so one of the most famous ones, I suppose, was the Apollo 13, where they had a leaking oxygen tank, and you had, I think, 6 or 7 astronauts that were, whatever it was, maybe three astronauts that had their lives threatened because the oxygen was leaking. There was nowhere else to get oxygen, and they had to come up with a solution based on the tools and equipment that they had on the spaceship at that time. You couldn't go down the local hardware store and get a screw or a bracket or whatever. You had to face it, and you had to do it within an incredibly short space of time. And they did, but they had a team of people. I saw the movie, and it was interesting, but I suppose there's a few little things that didn't quite gel in truth, but cinematography versus truth sometimes get blurred. But they had, nevertheless, they had to solve that problem, and very, very quickly. Otherwise, they'd have run out of oxygen, they'd have died. So, that's a mental toughness, to think under pressure, rationally, logically, and come up with a solution that, even though it was probably a Band-Aid solution, it wasn't a final solution. The final solution would have been the next launch, when they introduced products that didn't have that flaw or that potential flaw. But coming up with something, it's how you respond, it's how you react to adversity, such that you can think through a very difficult situation, and not let the sort of the red mist of anger get to you. I've played golf, and I've played rugby, and I've had situations where I know people have lost it. They've lost the plot as far as, that they're trying to play a game of whatever, and they go to anger. And as soon as you get the anger bit, you forget and you lose your ability to rationally think. And I believe that is where the mental toughness comes in. You're faced with extreme pressure, but you've got to come and resolve an issue. So in a business, something happens. We had the charity that I'm on the board for, we had an incident where a lady had an accident. It's a matter of having people, not panicking about it, but following the procedure. But, having thought through the scenario, you've trained them well enough, they've got a procedure to follow, it's thought through well. The world is, surrounded by, incidents and effectiveness. If the incident is a severe thing and you haven't practiced what you need to do, then you will make mistakes. Whereas if you've sat down and done tabletop exercises to rationally think through without the pressure, and then build. So to your question, how do you develop toughness? It's to be faced with little small pieces of that stressful position. I did that with my daughter, trying to just make her do something, or ask her to do something that ultimately will make her tougher in that scenario. Right the way through from when she was very young, to go to a shopkeeper and ask them for some help. That is something an introverted daughter wasn't going to do. And she'd let you do it all day for her. It was sort of, nope, you want it, you've got to go and ask her. And forcing that situation, it's got to the point where, she's very confident about doing a lot of things and speaking to strangers. Whereas if I'd have done it all for her, she'd still be that introverted little girl or young lady that wouldn't have that sort of ability. And you can look at that from a lot of different areas in life. Just get the experience, and then have the support network behind them, so that if something goes wrong, then you're there to catch them, but not to step in immediately. Let it go wrong. Let them learn from it. And there's a quote from I think Oprah Winfrey. If it's not tough, and you've not felt tight about it, you've not really learned. I'm not using the words correctly, but you've got to feel something about it before it becomes a real. If it's an emotional response, you'll learn tremendously on it, because you'll remember it, and you've got that internal anguish that you've been facing, and as a result of it, I think the next time that situation arises, you go through that very emotional bit, that very tight bit, but then you go, okay, I came out of it last time, I can do it this time. And every time you do it, it is like developing a muscle. You can just get that little bit better, in a negotiation. You can get that little bit better, that little bit more polished, but you've got to do it. Presenting in front of people. First time you do it, you'll be maybe nervous. Second time, a little less nervous. 100th time, it's like falling off a log.
Absolutely. There's nothing like experience. Experience can be a wonderful teacher.
Right.
And this has been an absolutely fabulous experience having you on the show, Paul. How can people get a hold of you? Anyone who might want to work with you, what's the best way?
Okay. My website, got all my contact details, TIDAL Coach, TIDAL, and then Coach, COACH. And, go in there, hit the contact me button. My email address, my phone number is on there. Text me, email me, and ask me to have a coffee, sit down and, just see how things can go.
Very good. Full disclosure, I've had the pleasure of having a coffee with Paul, and it's very, very worth anyone's while, I would say. Well, Paul, thank you so much for being on the show today.
I appreciate it, Tony. Thank you, and have a great weekend.
You too.
Thanks. Bye-bye.